Genesis. This is a story about the creation of the world, the genesis of mankind, and its divine origin. Before the sun bathed the earth in light, before the first breath of life stirred, there was only an endless void. Stay with me until the end, because this journey is unlike any other. You will witness miracles, tragedies, and the unfathomable plan of God, who never abandoned his people. Every twist, every trial, every triumph is part of a grand design. You won't want to miss a single moment. In the beginning, darkness reigned over the abyss, a boundless void where silence was absolute. Yet, in the midst of nothingness, the Spirit of God hovered above the waters, ready to bring forth wonders unimaginable. Then, with a command that shattered the void, God spoke, "Let there be light." And as if by divine magic, light was born, piercing the darkness, illuminating the cosmos for the first time. God saw that the light was good and separated it from the darkness. He called the light day and the darkness night, bringing the first day to an end. On the second day, God declared, "Let there be an expanse to separate the waters above from the waters below." And so it happened. The heavens stretched over creation, forming the great firmament that would bear witness to the unfolding of divine plans. Evening came and morning followed. The second day was complete. On the third day, the voice of the Creator echoed once more, "Let the waters under the sky gather into one place, and let dry ground appear." At his command, the earth took shape, the seas roared into existence, and the land stood firm. And he spoke again, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees bearing fruit, each according to its kind." In an instant, life erupted from the soil. Lush greenery spread across the land, and trees bore fruit in abundance. God marveled at his work, for it was good. And then came the fourth day, and God said, "Let there be lights in the sky to separate day from night, to mark seasons, days, and years." At his word, two majestic celestial bodies emerged, a blazing orb to govern the day, the sun, and a mysterious queen to rule the night, the moon. Stars, like scattered jewels, adorned the heavens, illuminating the earth with their distant brilliance. The harmony of light and darkness was established, and God was pleased. But creation was not yet complete. On the fifth day, the Lord declared, "Let the waters teem with living creatures, and let birds soar above the earth." In an instant, the ocean swelled with life. Great sea creatures prowled the depths, and vibrant fish swam in dazzling arrays. Above, birds spread their wings, their melodies filling the sky. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the seas and the sky." On the sixth day, the once silent land trembled as God spoke again. "Let the land bring forth living creatures, livestock, wild animals, and creatures that crawl upon the earth." At his word, the land came alive. Herds roamed the plains, mighty beasts thundered through the forests, and serpents slithered through the undergrowth. Yet the masterpiece of creation was yet to come. With divine purpose, God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and all the earth." From the dust of the ground, God formed man and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Man opened his eyes, his heart beat strongly, and for the first time, humanity existed. Creation was complete, and God saw that it was very good. On the seventh day, he rested. setting a divine example for all time, blessing the day and making it holy. And so, God prepared a paradise for the man he had created, and also a garden unlike any other, and named it Eden. Rivers flowed with crystal clarity, nourishing the trees heavy with fruit. The air was sweet with the fragrance of blossoms, and all creatures lived in harmony. In the midst of this paradise stood two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God placed Adam in the garden, charging him to care for it. But he gave a solemn command. You may eat from any tree in the garden, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for on the day you do, you will surely die. Seeing that it was not good for man to be alone, God caused a deep sleep to come over Adam. From his side, he fashioned a companion, Eve. When Adam beheld her, he rejoiced, for she was bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. Together they walked in the presence of God, unashamed and free. But lurking in the shadows was the serpent, cunning and deceitful. The serpent approached Eve and whispered, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Eve replied, "We may eat the fruit of any tree except the one in the midst of the garden. If we eat it or even touch it, we will die." With a sly smile, the serpent said, "You will not surely die. God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like him, knowing good and evil." Desire stirred in Eve's heart. She reached for the fruit, plucked it, and took a bite. Then she handed it to Adam, and he too ate. At once their eyes were opened, and they knew they were naked. Shame and fear overtook them, and they hid among the trees. Then, in the cool of the day, the voice of God echoed through the garden. "Adam, where are you?" Trembling, Adam stepped forward. "I heard you, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid." "Who told you that you were naked?" God asked. "Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?" Adam pointed to Eve. "The woman you gave me, she gave me the fruit, and I ate." God turned to Eve and asked her, "What is this you have done?" Eve said to the Most High, "The serpent you created deceived me, and I ate." Judgment fell upon them, and God then pronounces a curse on Eve. "I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." To Adam, God said, "Because you have heeded the voice of your wife, and have eaten from the tree of which I commanded you, saying, 'You shall not eat of it.' Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return." This means that because of Adam's disobedience, life would become difficult, work would be hard, the land would resist cultivation, and ultimately, death would be inevitable. To the serpent, God said, "Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you crawl, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." But something else happened. Eden trembled, and for a moment the trees wept with golden leaves. God, in his mercy, crafted garments from animal skins for them, a sign that blood had been shed for their covering. With heavy hearts Adam and Eve left paradise behind, their hands intertwined, stepping into an unknown world. The gates of Eden closed behind them, guarded by a flaming sword. Thus, sin entered the world. But even in exile, a promise lingered. The seed of the woman would one day crush the serpent's head. After Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden for disobeying God, they began to build a life outside paradise. In time, Eve gave birth to her first son, Cain. She declared, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to a second son, Abel. Cain, the elder, was a farmer tilling the soil, shaping the land beneath his hands. Abel, his younger brother, was a shepherd, tending the flocks that roamed the wild fields. In time, both brothers brought offerings to the Lord. Abel carefully chose the best of his flock, the finest firstborn lambs, and sacrificed them to God. Cain, on the other hand, gathered some of his crops and presented them as an offering. As the smoke of their offerings rose to the heavens, God looked with favor upon Abel's sacrifice, but he did not accept Cain's. Cain's face darkened with anger. Jealousy burned within him. His offering was the work of his hands. Why was it not enough? Why was his brother's sacrifice deemed worthy while his was ignored? Seeing his anger, God spoke to Cain. "Why are you so angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, you will be accepted. But if you do not, sin is waiting at your door, eager to control you. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Instead of listening to God's warning, Cain allowed jealousy to consume him, and in a fit of rage, murdered him. One evening, under the guise of brotherhood, he lured his brother Abel into the field. Cain called to Abel, "Come, let us go to the field." Abel followed, trusting and obeying the words of his beloved elder brother. On reaching the field, Cain turned upon him, his face contorted with fury. In one brutal motion, he struck his brother down. The shepherd fell, the life within him slipping away, his blood soaking into the soil. The very earth Cain had once nurtured has tasted the blood of his brother. Then came the silence. The wind carried no voice. The birds held their song, and the earth seemed to grieve. But then, from the heavens, the voice of God called, "Cain, where is your brother Abel?" Cain's lips curled into a sneer, but his voice betrayed his unease. "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord's voice thundered, filled with sorrow and judgment. "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." The ground itself had become witness to the first murder, and it would not keep silent. The blood of Abel, innocent and pure, had soaked into the land, calling for justice. Then the Lord declared his judgment. "Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the soil, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain's pride shattered into fear. He fell to his knees. "My punishment is more than I can bear. You have banished me from the land and from your presence. Whoever finds me will kill me." But even in his judgment, the Lord showed mercy. Number: if anyone kills Cain, vengeance will be taken on him sevenfold. Then the Lord placed a mark upon Cain, a sign of both his guilt and his protection. Banished from his home, Cain wandered east of Eden into the land of Nod. The land stretched before him, vast and unwelcoming, and the weight of his sin pressed upon him. He was the first murderer, the bearer of cursed hands, doomed to walk the earth without peace. Thus, the sons of Adam were divided, one slain, one condemned. And the blood of Abel whispered a sorrowful song that would never be forgotten. In the generations following Adam and Eve, humanity multiplied on earth. However, as people spread across the land, their hearts became increasingly corrupt. The Bible describes this time as one of great wickedness. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The earth had become a place of wickedness where violence and corruption spread like an unrelenting plague. The hearts of men were consumed with evil, their thoughts darkened with greed, malice, and bloodshed. And he decided to bring judgment upon the earth, but in his mercy, he chose to spare one righteous man and his family. A man who walked a different path, his name, Noah, a righteous man who found favor in the eyes of God. He was a man of integrity, standing firm against the tide of wickedness, a beacon of light in a world of darkness. One evening, as Noah tended to his fields, the sky above him swirled with ominous clouds. A voice, powerful yet sorrowful, echoed through the heavens. God said, "Noah, I am going to destroy the earth with a great flood, for people have filled it with evil. But you have found favor in my eyes. Build an ark, a great wooden vessel, to save yourself, your family, and every kind of living creature." The ark was to be made of gopher wood, covered in pitch inside and out. It would be 300 cubits long, about 450 feet, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. A massive structure. It would have 3 decks, a roof, and a single door on the side. With unwavering faith, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, set to work, hammering and carving, binding great beams together. People mocked them, laughing at the idea of a flood. "Look at this fool," they sneered. "He builds a ship on dry land, fearing a flood that will never come." But Noah remained faithful. Days turned to weeks, weeks to years, and finally the ark stood complete, its massive frame stretching like a fortress of wood, towering above the plains. Then God told Noah, "Gather the animals, 2 of every kind, male and female. Of clean animals, take 7 pairs. Bring food for them and your family. The flood will come in 7 days." Then the day came when the animals began to arrive. From the forests, from the mountains, from the deserts and the seas, they came in pairs, guided by an unseen force. Lions walking beside lambs, eagles soaring overhead, elephants thundering across the plains. 2 by 2, they entered the ark, filling its vast chambers. Then Noah and his family gathered provisions and entered the ark. As the last of them stepped inside, a mighty wind swept through the land, and the great door of the ark was sealed, not by human hands, but by the hand of God himself. For 7 days, an eerie silence hung over the earth. The sky grew heavy with brooding clouds, darker than the blackest night. Then, on the 7th day, the heavens roared open. Water fell from the sky in torrents, a deluge unlike anything the world had ever seen. The fountains of the deep burst forth, and rivers became oceans, swallowing the land. Panic erupted among the people. Those who had mocked Noah now ran in terror, clawing at the ark, screaming for salvation. But it was too late. The waters rose higher and higher, consuming mountains, erasing cities, drowning kingdoms. For 40 days and 40 nights, the storm raged. The world was unmade, returned to the waters from which it had been formed. Inside the ark, Noah and his family could hear the relentless pounding of rain, the cries of the dying fading into silence. But they remained safe, sheltered within God's covenant. Then, after 40 days, the rain ceased. The ark floated upon a boundless sea, the water stretching as far as the eye could see. For months, Noah and his family waited. The silence was vast and unbroken, the world outside a great empty void. At last, Noah sent forth a raven, but it did not return. Then he sent a dove, which returned with nothing. A week later, he sent the dove again, and this time it came back with an olive leaf clutched in its beak. Hope stirred in Noah's heart. After a year upon the waters, the ark came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat, present-day eastern Turkey, near the borders with Armenia and Iran. The door was unsealed, and Noah and his family stepped onto dry land once more. The earth, washed clean, lay before them like a newborn child. Then Noah built an altar and offered a sacrifice of thanksgiving to God. And God, in his mercy, placed a sign in the sky, a radiant arc of color stretching across the heavens. "This," God declared, "is the sign of the covenant I make with you and all living creatures. Never again will I destroy the earth with a flood." And so, life began anew after the flood, the children of Noah scattering across the earth. His 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the ancestors of all humanity. The descendants of Shem settled in the regions of the Middle East, while Ham's descendants spread into Africa and parts of Asia. Japheth's descendants migrated to Europe and other northern regions. As the population grew, people began to migrate and establish new communities. In time, Ham's descendants settled in the land of Shinar, modern-day Iraq. There, they decided to build a city with a tower that reached to the heavens. Their motivation was twofold: to make a name for themselves and to prevent being scattered across the earth. They used baked bricks and tar to construct the tower, showcasing their ingenuity and ambition. However, their actions displeased God. He saw their pride and their desire to elevate themselves rather than honor Him. To disrupt their plans, God confused their language, causing them to speak different tongues. Unable to understand one another, the people abandoned the tower and scattered across the earth. The city was called Babel, meaning confusion, because of the confusion of languages that took place there, and then came in the land of Ur, where idols were worshipped and men built great cities for themselves. A man named Abram lived with his family. One day, the voice of the Almighty God came to him. "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Abram did not hesitate. He believed God's promise. At 75 years old, with his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their servants and possessions. Together, they set out on a journey, leaving behind the only home they had ever known, trusting in a God who had called them to an unknown land. The journey was long, but Abram pressed on. Finally, they arrived in Canaan. As Abram stood in Shechem, present-day city of Nablus and Palestinian, gazing at the land before him, the Lord appeared to him again and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." In awe and gratitude, Abram built an altar on that very spot, worshiping the God who had led him. But his journey did not end there. Abram continued traveling, moving toward Bethel and pitching his tent between Bethel and Ai. Again, He built an altar and called upon the name of the Lord. With each step, Abram's faith grew stronger. He had left his past behind, but he carried with him something far greater, the promise of a future shaped by God's blessing. Years passed, and Abram wondered how God's promise could come true. He was childless, and Sarai was well beyond the age of bearing children. One evening, as Abram sat outside his tent, gazing at the sky, God appeared again. "Look up at the stars. Count them if you can. So shall your descendants be." Abram believed, and God counted it as righteousness. As time passed, Sarai grew impatient and suggested that Abram have a child with her maidservant Hagar. Abram agreed, and Hagar bore him a son named Ishmael. However, this was not the child of God's promise. God later clarified that his covenant would be fulfilled through a son born to Sarai despite her old age. Another year passed, and God reaffirmed his covenant with Abram, changing his name to Abraham, father of many nations, and Sarai's name to Sarah, princess. God established circumcision as the sign of the covenant, requiring all males in Abraham's household to be circumcised. God also promised that Sarah would bear a son, whom they were to name Isaac. Meanwhile, in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, wickedness festered like a disease. The people had abandoned all righteousness, indulging in violence and corruption. Their sins cried out to heaven, and God decided to destroy them. But before destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, God revealed to Abraham that he planned to judge the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah for their grievous sin. Abraham, concerned for his nephew Lot, who lived in Sodom, pleaded with God to spare the cities if even a small number of righteous people could be found. He asked, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it?" God agreed to spare the cities for the sake of 50 righteous people. Abraham continued to negotiate, lowering the number to 45, then 40, 30, 20, and finally 10. God agreed each time, showing his mercy and willingness to spare the cities for the sake of a few righteous people. However, when the angels sent to Sodom found only Lot and his family as righteous, the two angels warned him of the coming destruction. "Take your wife and your daughters and flee. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the plain, or you will be swept away." And God destroyed the cities with fire and brimstone. Lot and his daughters were spared, but while escaping the city and its destruction, his wife tuned back, due to her love for material possessions, including wealth, jewelry, and her past life in, and immediately turned into a pillar of salt. This event underscored the seriousness of sin and the importance of obedience to God. Despite all the trials, Abraham still had no son by Sarah, but God's promise never fails. One day, 3 heavenly visitors appeared at Abraham's tent. They delivered a miraculous message. By this time next year, Sarah will have a son. Sarah, now 90 years old, laughed at the thought. But God asked, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" And just as he had promised, Sarah bore a son. They named him Isaac, meaning laughter, for God had turned their sorrow into joy. Through Isaac, God's covenant continued, and from his descendants came a nation as numerous as the stars, a nation that would bring forth the Savior of the world, Jesus Christ. And so Isaac grew older and got married to a woman named Rebekah. They lived many years without a child of their own. Isaac offered prayers and sacrificed to God to bless him and his wife with a child. God responded to Isaac's prayer on behalf of his barren wife Rebekah by granting her conception, stating that 2 nations would be born from her, with the older serving the younger. After years of infertility, Rebekah conceived twins. Even before they were born, the 2 brothers struggled in the womb. Disturbed by this, Rebekah sought the Lord, and he told her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples shall be separated from you. One will be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. At last, the twins were born. The first was covered in red hair and was named Esau. The second followed, grasping his brother's heel, and was called Jacob. As they grew, Esau became a skilled hunter, a man of the wild, while Jacob was quiet and preferred to stay at home. Their father Isaac favored Esau, who brought him game and satisfied his hunger. But Rebekah, their mother, loved Jacob, seeing in him the sharper mind, the one destined for greater things. One day, Esau returned from hunting exhausted and hungry. He found Jacob cooking a delicious pot of stew and begged for some. Seizing the moment, Jacob said, "First, sell me your birthright." Esau, caring more about his hunger than his inheritance, shrugged and said, "What good is a birthright to me if I die of hunger? Take it and give me food." He swore an oath, sealing his fate with a single careless choice. Years passed, and Isaac, now old and blind, felt the weight of death drawing near. He called for Esau. "My son, go out to the field, hunt game for me, and prepare my favorite meal. Then I will bless you before I die." Rebekah overheard the conversation. Then she summoned Jacob. "Do as I say. Go to the flock, bring me 2 young goats, and I will prepare a meal just as your father loves. You will take it to him, and he will bless you in Esau's place." Jacob hesitated. "But Esau is a hairy man, and my skin is smooth. If father touches me, he will curse me instead of blesses me." "Let the curse fall on me," Rebekah insisted. "Only do as I say." With his mother's help, Jacob clothed himself in Esau's garments and covered his arms with the skins of the goats. He carried the meal into his father's tent. "Who are you, my son?" Isaac asked. Jacob steadied his voice. "I am Esau, your firstborn. Eat, that you may bless me." Suspicion flickered in Isaac's mind. "Come closer, so I may touch you." As he ran his frail hands over the goatskin-covered arms, he murmured, "The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's." After eating, Isaac stretched out his hands in blessing. "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness. May nations serve you, and may your brother bow before you." Jacob left the tent with his father's blessing. When Esau returned from the fields, a fresh kill slung over his shoulder. He eagerly prepared a savory meal for his father, seasoning the meat just the way Isaac loved it. With excitement in his heart, he carried the dish to his father's tent, expecting to receive the blessing meant for him. "My father, sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac, who was old and blind, trembled violently. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Esau, your firstborn." A heavy silence filled the tent. Then Isaac whispered, "Your brother came deceitfully and has taken your blessing." The words struck Esau like a dagger. His body shook with rage and sorrow as he cried out, "Bless me, me too, my father." But Isaac could only reply, "I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him as servants. I have sustained him with grain and wine. What can I possibly do for you, my son?" Esau wept bitterly. "Have you only one blessing, my father? Bless me too." Isaac sighed and placed his hands on Esau's head. But the blessing was different from Jacob's. "Behold, your dwelling shall be away from the richness of the earth, and away from the dew of heaven above. You shall live by the sword, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." Esau clenched his fists. His sorrow turned to hatred. His rage burned like a fire. "He has deceived me twice, first my birthright, and now my blessing. When my father dies, I will kill Jacob." Fearing for Jacob's life, Rebekah sent him away to her brother Laban's household. Thus began Jacob's long journey, one that would shape his destiny and fulfill God's promise. Years passed, and there came Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob, and the firstborn of Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife. Jacob loved Joseph deeply and gave him a richly ornamented robe, often referred to as the coat of many colors. This favoritism, along with Joseph's dreams of his brothers bowing down to him, fueled their jealousy and resentment. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were tending the flocks near Shechem. When the brothers saw Joseph approaching, they plotted to kill him. Reuben, the eldest, intervened and suggested they throw Joseph into a pit instead, intending to rescue him later. However, while Reuben was away, the brothers sold Joseph to a passing caravan of Ishmaelite traders for 20 shekels of silver. The traders took Joseph to Egypt, where he was sold as a slave to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh. In Egypt, Joseph served Potiphar faithfully. God was with Joseph, and he found favor in Potiphar's eyes. Potiphar put Joseph in charge of his entire household, trusting him completely. However, Joseph's integrity was tested when Potiphar's wife falsely accused him of misconduct after he refused her advances. Despite his innocence, Joseph was thrown into prison. Even in prison, Joseph's character and God's presence with him were evident. The prison warden put Joseph in charge of the other prisoners, and he gained a reputation for his wisdom and reliability. While in prison, Joseph interpreted the dreams of two fellow inmates, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. The cupbearer's dream foretold his restoration to his position, while the baker's dream predicted his execution. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him and mention him to Pharaoh, but the cupbearer forgot. 2 years later, Pharaoh had troubling dreams that none of his wise men could interpret. The cupbearer remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about his ability to interpret dreams. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh, who described his dreams. 7 fat cows were devoured by 7 lean cows, and 7 healthy heads of grain were swallowed by 7 thin, scorched heads. Joseph, giving credit to God, explained that the dreams were a warning from God. The 7 fat cows and healthy grains represented 7 years of abundance, while the 7 lean cows and thin grains symbolized 7 years of severe famine that would follow. Joseph advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise and discerning man to oversee the collection and storage of grain during the years of plenty to prepare for the famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh declared, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" And then he appointed Joseph as second in command over all of Egypt, giving him authority to implement the plan. Joseph's rise to power was quick and extraordinary. Pharaoh gave him his signet ring, dressed him in fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. He gave Joseph the Egyptian name Zaphanath-Paneah, and arranged for him to marry Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, a priest of On. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered Pharaoh's service. During the 7 years of abundance, Joseph oversaw the collection and storage of grain in every city. When the famine struck, not only Egypt, but also surrounding nations were affected. People came to Egypt to buy grain, and Joseph's leadership ensured that Egypt had enough food to survive and even prosper during the crisis. During the severe famine that Joseph had predicted, food was scarce in Canaan. Jacob sent his 10 eldest sons to Egypt to buy grain, keeping his youngest son Benjamin at home because he feared losing him as he had lost Joseph. When the brothers arrived in Egypt, they appeared before Joseph, who was now the governor of the land. They did not recognize him, but Joseph immediately knew who they were. Instead of revealing himself, Joseph spoke harshly to them and accused them of being spies. "Where do you come from?" he demanded. "From the land of Canaan, to buy food," they answered. Joseph, remembering their betrayal, decided to test them. He imprisoned them for 3 days and then released them, keeping Simeon behind as a hostage. He told them, "Bring your youngest brother back to me to prove you are honest men." The remaining brothers went back to Canaan and explained to their father about the situation. But Jacob was reluctant to let Benjamin go, fearing for his safety. However, as the famine worsened, he had no choice but to allow his sons to return to Egypt with Benjamin. When the brothers returned to Egypt, Joseph was moved to see Benjamin, his full brother. He prepared a feast for them, but continued to test their character. He instructed his steward to place his silver cup in Benjamin's sack. After the brothers left, Joseph sent his steward after them, accusing them of theft. When the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, the brothers were distraught. The brothers pleaded for mercy, with Judah offering himself as a slave in place of Benjamin. This act of sacrifice and love moved Joseph deeply. Unable to hold back his emotions any longer, Joseph wept loudly and sent his servants away. Then, turning to his brothers, he finally said, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers were stunned and terrified. The very man they had sold into slavery was now ruler over Egypt. Seeing their fear, Joseph reassured them, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." Joseph embraced his brothers, especially Benjamin, and wept with them. After Joseph revealed himself to his brothers and forgave them, Pharaoh heard the news and was pleased that Joseph's family had been found. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers to load their animals and return to Canaan. Let them bring their father and their families and come to me. I will give them the best of the land of Egypt, and they will eat the fat of the land." He also ordered that wagons be provided to carry their wives, children, and their father, along with plenty of food for the journey. When the brothers arrived in Canaan, they rushed to tell Jacob the incredible news. Joseph is still alive. He is ruler over all Egypt. At first, Jacob could not believe it, but when he saw the wagons and the gifts Joseph had sent, his heart revived. With great joy, Jacob declared, "My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Thus, Jacob and his entire family prepared to move to Egypt, fulfilling God's plan for them to become a great nation in a foreign land. Jacob set out on the long journey to Egypt with his entire family, including his sons, their wives, and all their children. They stopped at Beersheba, and he offered sacrifices to God. That night, God spoke to Jacob in a vision. "Do not be afraid to go to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go with you, and I will surely bring you back." Encouraged by God's promise, Jacob continued the journey. As they neared Egypt, Joseph rode out in his chariot to meet his father. When Jacob saw his beloved son, whom he thought was dead for years, he embraced him and wept for a long time. Through tears of joy, Jacob said, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Joseph took 5 of his brothers to meet Pharaoh and introduced them as shepherds. Pharaoh welcomed them warmly and gave them the best land in Egypt, Goshen, where they could live and tend their flocks. Then Joseph brought Jacob before Pharaoh. Despite being an old man, Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" Jacob answered, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My life has been difficult, but God has sustained me." Pharaoh allowed them to settle in the fertile land of Goshen, and Joseph provided food for his family during the famine. 17 years later, Jacob's health began to fail. He called Joseph to his bedside and made him promise to bury him in Canaan, not Egypt. Joseph brought his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to receive Jacob's blessing. Jacob crossed his hands, placing his right hand on Ephraim the younger and his left on Manasseh, the firstborn, symbolizing that the younger would be greater than the elder. And then he gathered his sons around him and blessed each of them, speaking prophetic words about their future. Then he gave them a final command: "I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave, in the field of Machpelah." This was the same burial site where Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob's wife Leah were laid to rest. After saying these words, Jacob breathed his last and died at the age of 147. Joseph mourned deeply for his father and had him embalmed according to Egyptian customs. He then led a grand procession to Canaan to bury Jacob in the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah were buried. This act fulfilled Jacob's final wish and demonstrated Joseph's respect for his father and his heritage. After Jacob's burial, Joseph and his brothers returned to Egypt. But now that their father was gone, Joseph's brothers became afraid. "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and repays us for all the wrong we did to him?" they said. The brothers sent a message to Joseph saying that before Jacob died, he had commanded Joseph to forgive them. Then they came before him, bowing down and saying, "We are your servants." But Joseph did not seek revenge. Instead, he comforted them with these famous words: "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph then promised to provide for them and their families. He spoke kindly to them, showing that his heart was full of forgiveness and grace. Joseph lived in Egypt for many more years and saw his great-grandchildren grow up. As he neared death at the age of 110, he called his family together and made them swear an oath. "God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to the land he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When that happens, carry my bones up from here." Joseph died in Egypt, but his faith remained in God's promise that the Israelites would one day return to Canaan. His body was embalmed and placed in a coffin, waiting for the day when Moses and the Israelites would carry his bones to the promised land. This promise was fulfilled centuries later during the Exodus. And so, the book of Genesis comes to an end, not as a conclusion, but as the foundation of a much greater story. From the creation of the world to the birth of nations, from mankind's fall to God's enduring promises, every event has shaped the destiny of those who would come after. But this is only the beginning. The journey of faith, redemption, and divine purpose continues far beyond these pages. The God who spoke light into the darkness is the same God who guides history, who calls His people, and who fulfills His promises. As we close this chapter, remember, the story of Genesis is not just ancient history, it is the story of all of us, a story of struggle, faith, and hope. And it reminds us that no matter how broken the world becomes, God's plan is never lost. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories to life, and we can't wait to continue this journey with you. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next chapter. God bless you.